Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be stepping into a future that's both exhilarating and maybe a little bit daunting. The world, after we achieve artificial general intelligence, or AGI,
Right.
and reach the singularity.
It's amazing how fast this has gone from science fiction to serious discussions,
Absolutely.
in labs and, at the dinner table.
Yeah,
It's pretty wild.
for sure. And our guide for this deep dive is an interesting YouTube video by Ivan Edrovoji called El Reloj de la Singularidad, Predicciones sobre el futuro de la humanidad en la Post-Singularity.
Okay.
What's really cool about this is how Ivan uses AI tools like image generation and conversations with GPT-4 to kind of illustrate these ideas.
It's really meta,
Yeah,
right?
it's very meta.
Yeah, using the technology that
Let's talk about the technology.
Did you talk about the technology?
Yeah.
It's like holding a mirror up to the future.
Right. And speaking of the future, what are some of the big questions we're going to be tackling in this deep dive?
Well, I think one of the things is what aspects of life might still be scarce, even in a world of superintelligence?
Right.
And whether AI could help us solve some of humanity's greatest challenges, like climate change or even aging.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by his ideas about how we might need to adapt psychologically and socially. What happens to our sense of purpose when work is potentially redefined? Or how will we find fulfillment in a post-singularity society?
Yeah, that's a big one.
So many questions.
A huge question.
Yeah, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
One of the first points that Ivan raises is that even with AGI, certain resources are likely to remain limited.
Okay.
We're talking about things like fertile land, readily accessible minerals, clean drinking water.
Yeah.
AGI can solve a lot of problems, but it can't just magically create new resources, can it?
No, we're still bound by the laws of physics and the limitations of our planet, at least initially.
Right.
Exactly.
So this is where things start to get interesting, though.
Okay.
Because the video suggests that AGI could offer some game-changing solutions to these limitations.
Okay.
So, for example, imagine if AGI helps us finally crack the code of nuclear fusion.
That's a big one.
Right.
Abundant clean energy from nuclear fusion would be a game changer.
Totally.
Desalination suddenly becomes much more feasible.
Right.
You could irrigate vast deserts, turn them into
fertile farmland.
Farmland.
Right. And what about extracting resources from asteroids or the moon?
Yeah.
With enough energy, even that becomes a possibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, these limitations on resources start to look a little less daunting.
Yeah.
Like we're expanding the boundaries of what's possible.
I like that, expanding the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah.
That's great. And this leads to the idea of cognitive abundance that Ivan talks about.
Yeah. Okay.
He predicts that AGI could usher in just an explosion of knowledge and problem solving across all sorts of fields like physics, medicine, material science, you name it.
Yeah.
It's like hitting the fast forward button on human progress.
Right. Like imagine eradicating diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries.
Yeah.
Or developing technologies that allow us to manipulate matter at the atomic level.
It's wild to think about.
It's really wild.
It really is.
It's like some sci-fi stuff, but,
It makes you wonder about the potential downsides of such rapid advancement. But before we get into that,
Okay.
Ivan brings up something called the Kardashev scale.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, so it's a way of measuring a civilization's technological advancement based on its energy consumption, like how much energy a civilization is able to harness.
Got it.
We're currently a type 0 civilization,
Okay.
meaning we haven't even fully harnessed the energy potential of our own planet.
But with AGI, we could rapidly progress to a type 1 civilization where we fully utilize our planet's energy resources, or even a type 2 civilization which can harness the energy of an entire star.
That's mind-blowing.
That's mind-boggling.
Right, a type 2 civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it puts the potential of AGI into perspective.
Yeah, we're talking about a level of energy control that could allow us to reshape entire planets.
Wow.
Or even build massive structures in space.
Wow.
It's a future filled with both incredible opportunities and immense responsibilities.
Yeah. So let's bring this back down to Earth for a minute.
Okay.
If AI can potentially solve so many of our problems and automate so many tasks,
Right.
what does that mean for us, the humans?
Right.
What happens to the concept of work in a world where machines can outperform us in almost every way?
I think a lot of people are asking this question, and Ivan suggests that we might need to redefine the very nature of work.
Okay.
Perhaps instead of working to survive, we'll work to thrive.
Okay.
Focusing on creative pursuits, personal fulfillment, and exploring our passions.
So like a major shift in how we understand the value of human effort.
Yeah, a really profound shift.
It sounds almost utopian.
It does?
But it raises a lot of questions about the structure of society, right?
Yeah.
Like what happens to our economic systems, our social safety nets, our sense of purpose and identity?
Right, what does success look like in this new world?
And speaking of purpose, Ivan also highlights how education might need a complete overhaul in a post-singularity world.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What skills and knowledge will be truly valuable in a society where AI can handle so many of the tasks we rely on today?
Yeah, like why memorize facts when you have access to all the world's information at your fingertips?
Right, exactly.
Right.
It makes you wonder if traditional subjects would even be relevant anymore.
Totally.
We have to really rethink what it means to learn.
It'd require a pretty radical reimagining of the education system, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And that brings us to another crucial point. The psychological and social adaptations we might need to make in a world transformed by AGI.
Yeah, how do we adapt as humans?
Exactly. So let's dive into that next, but first I'm curious to hear your thoughts so far.
Okay.
What's resonating with you as we explore this potential future?
Well, I mean, it's a lot to take in, right? I think,
wild.
Yeah, it's just wild to think about how quickly things are changing.
Yeah,
and
it feels like we're at this precipice.
Yeah, we're on the verge of something really big.
Of something huge, and we don't know what's on the other side.
And it's both exciting and a little bit scary at the same time.
I agree, and I think that's a good place to take a break.
Okay.
We'll come back and
sounds good.
Explore the psychological and social
adaptations
that we might need to make in this world.
All right, looking forward to it.
So we'll see if you all...
See ya. It's kind of easy to get caught up in all the exciting advancements, but it's important to consider the psychological and social implications, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like, how are we as humans going to adapt to a world where we might not have to think as much or where traditional work structures could dissolve?
Yeah, what happens to our sense of purpose, you know?
Exactly. If work as we know it ceases to exist, what's going to motivate us to get out of bed in the morning?
That's a good question, and Ivan brings that up in the video, and he kind of connects it back to our fundamental psychological needs.
Yeah.
You know, things like autonomy, connection, and competence.
Right.
Even if we don't need to work to survive, we're still going to crave those feelings of mastery and accomplishment.
Okay, so we're still going to need to feel like we're achieving something.
Yeah, exactly.
He even uses video games as an analogy, suggesting they could become an important space for connection and challenges.
Yeah.
In a post-singularity world.
It's interesting to think about.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Like think about all the complex problem-solving and teamwork involved in some of today's online games.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it's important to remember that they're still just simulations.
Right.
We're going to have to find ways to connect with the real world and derive purpose beyond the confines of virtual reality.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't all just live in the metaverse.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so speaking of pushing the boundaries of reality, Ivan briefly touches on the concepts of transhumanism and posthumanism.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the idea that we might merge with technology or even transcend our current human forms.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It's a mind-bending concept.
Right. What does it mean to be human in a world where the lines between biology and technology are blurred?
It's really hard to even imagine at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's come back to some of the more immediate concerns about AGI.
Okay.
The video also addresses some of the potential risks, like the classic sci-fi scenario of AI turning against humanity.
Right.
Or falling into the wrong hands.
Yeah, we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
The stuff of nightmares.
Exactly.
So how do we prevent that?
Yeah, it's really important that we ensure AI remains aligned with human values and that its development stays under human control.
Okay. How do we do that, though?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ivan talks about digital literacy.
Okay.
Basically understanding how these technologies work and what their impact could be.
So the more we understand about AI, the better equipped we'll be to guide its development responsibly.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
But it also makes you wonder, is that enough?
Right.
Can we really control something that might surpass human intelligence?
Yeah. That's a tough one. And it leads to another important point that Ivan makes the need for responsible regulation and governance of AI.
Okay.
Like, how do we create rules that encourage innovation but also protect us from the risks?
Right. It feels like policymakers are already struggling to keep up with how fast AI is developing.
Totally. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah. So imagine trying to regulate superintelligent AI.
Right. It's a whole other level.
Yeah.
Ivan talks about the techno-literacy gap between the people creating the technology and the people who are supposed to be regulating it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a gap that we really need to bridge if we want to make sure we have a safe and beneficial future with AI.
So who do you think is better equipped to bridge that gap?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
I think we need people from both sides to work together.
Okay.
Like, we need technologists who really get AI, and we need policymakers who can translate that knowledge into laws and rules that actually work.
So a collaborative approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of policymakers, another concern that comes up in the video is the potential for economic inequality in a post-singularity world.
Yeah, that's a big one. What happens if not everyone benefits equally from AI?
Right. Could we end up with like a small elite who control the AI?
Yeah, and everyone else is left behind.
And everyone else is struggling.
Yeah, exactly. It's a real concern.
So what can we do about that?
Well, Ivan talks about things like universal basic income or UBI as a way to make sure everyone has at least a basic level of financial security.
Okay, so like a safety net.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes you think about how our whole economic system might need to evolve.
For sure.
Like, what even happens to the concept of wealth?
Yeah.
In a world where AI can just produce tons of goods and services.
Right. What does wealth even mean anymore?
Exactly.
We might start valuing different things like access to advanced technology or personalized experiences.
Interesting.
Maybe even longer lifespans.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the psychological impacts of a post-work society to the ethical challenges of transhumanism and the potential for economic upheaval.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we jump into the final part of our deep dive, what are your biggest takeaways so far?
I think for me, it's just how much uncertainty there is.
Yeah.
It's exciting and scary all at the same time.
I agree.
Like, we're standing on the edge of something completely new.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. But I think that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
Totally. It definitely keeps things interesting.
Okay, well, let's take a deep breath.
Okay.
And
good.
Dive into the final part of our exploration.
All right, let's do it. It really makes you think.
Yeah, it feels like we're on the verge of like a whole new era. Exciting, but a little terrifying, you know?
Absolutely. And I think with all this talk about, like, you know, the tech advancements and societal shifts, it's easy to lose sight of the human element.
Right. Ivan brings this up at the end of his video, and it really resonated with me. Like, even in a world completely transformed by AGI, certain human qualities will always be essential, you know?
Right.
Like our emotions, our creativity.
Yeah, our relationships with each other.
Our relationships.
Our search for meaning and purpose.
Like all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as we go into this uncharted territory fields like philosophy,
right,
art and even religion will become even more important.
I can see that.
Like, they can help us wrestle with those big existential questions that AI can't really answer for us.
Yeah, like what does it mean to be human in this world?
Right, exactly.
What are our values? What's our place in all of this?
Big questions.
Huge questions. Yeah, it's like, even if AI can solve all of our practical problems and create this world of abundance, we still have to figure out what it all means.
Yeah,
right?
We have to define our own purpose.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways that you think our listeners should kind of walk away with?
I think the biggest one for me is that the future with AGI and the singularity, it's not like set in stone. It's a future that we're actively creating right now with the choices that we're making today.
That's pretty empowering, isn't it?
I think so.
It means we have a say in how this all unfolds.
Totally. We need to approach it with a sense of wonder, but also with caution.
Right.
Because there's potential for both incredible good and, you know, pretty serious risks.
Yeah, for sure.
But no matter how advanced tech gets, it's our human values, our creativity, our compassion that will ultimately guide us to a future worth living in.
I love that. And speaking of guiding us towards the future, Ivan ends his video with a thought-provoking question. He asks, how do you envision the future of humanity alongside superintelligent AI? And what role will you play in shaping this new era?
Yeah, that's a powerful question.
It really is. It's an invitation to like really engage with these ideas and have those tough conversations and think critically about the choices we make today and how they're going to impact the world of tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
So to our listener, we're passing that question on to you. What does a post-singularity world mean to you? What role do you want to play in shaping it? Maybe you'll be inspired to explore these topics further. Maybe even have a conversation with GPT-4 yourself.
Yeah, why not?
Who knows? You might uncover some insights that we missed.
Exactly.
Until next time, keep on diving deep.